The implications were staggering. The humans hadn't been surprised by hunting guild attacks. They'd been orchestrating them. We needed test subjects, Chen explained. Live specimens to study, technical equipment to reverse engineer, real combat data to refine our defensive systems. Hunting guilds provided all of that. You used us, Krella said, understanding dawning in his voice. We used the other guilds, Chen corrected. You are just the latest batch of research material. But why? I asked. Why go to such elaborate lengths? Chen's expression grew serious. Because hunting guilds represent an existential threat to human expansion. As long as you exist, no human colony is safe. No human exploration mission can venture into unknown space without risking total annihilation. She gestured to the displays around the laboratory, which showed technical specifications for various hunting guild technologies. So we decided to eliminate the threat, she continued, not by hiding from you or negotiating with you or hoping you'd leave us alone, by studying you, understanding you, and developing countermeasures that would make hunting humans an impossibly dangerous proposition. You are talking about wiping out every hunting guild in the galaxy. Xerex observed. Not wiping out, Chen corrected. Converting. Some guilds will see reason and accept new employment opportunities with human organizations. Others will continue operating in non-human space, where they won't threaten human interests. And the rest? Chen's smile returned, cold and efficient. The rest will become research subjects. Just like you. The door opened again and more humans entered carrying equipment I didn't recognize but which looked ominous enough to inspire immediate concern. Now then, Chen said, consulting her datapad again. Who would like to volunteer for our first neural extraction procedure? None of us volunteered. No takers? Well, we will just have to choose randomly then. The humans began setting up their equipment with the kind of professional efficiency that suggested they'd done this many times before. I found myself wondering how many other hunters had passed through this facility and what had happened to them afterward. Before we begin, Chen announced, I should mention that this entire session is being recorded for training purposes. We are developing standardized procedures for hunting guild interrogation, and your responses will help us refine the process. Training purposes. They were turning our suffering into educational material for future human operations. You know, Krell said conversationally. When we first heard about humans, we thought you were just another primitive species, prey animals, who'd gotten lucky with technology. Understandable mistake, Chen replied, calibrating some kind of neural interface device. Most species make the same assumption. What are you really? I asked. I mean, what kind of species develops this level of tactical sophistication so quickly? Chen paused in her preparations and looked at me with what might have been genuine curiosity. You really don't know, do you? She asked. Know what? What humans are, where we come from, how we evolved. Endurance hunters, Zeprek said. Pack predators from a high-gravity world. That's part of it, Chen agreed, but you are missing the most important detail. Which is? Chen's smile became something that would have been terrifying even to another human. We are the species that hunted our own planet's apex predators to extinction, she said. For fun, the laboratory fell silent as the implications sank in. Every dangerous species on Earth, Chen continued, we killed them all. Not because they threatened us, but because we enjoyed the challenge. Saber-toothed cats, cave bears, dire wolves, megalodons, if it was big, dangerous, and impressive, we hunted it until it didn't exist anymore. That's monstrous, Dex whispered from the medical wing. That's human, Chen corrected. We are not just predators. We are apex predators who specialize in killing other apex predators. It's literally what we evolved to do. So when hunting guilds started targeting human space, Kress said, understanding finally dawning, you didn't see it as a threat. We saw it as entertainment, Chen confirmed. The most dangerous game in the galaxy had finally come to us. How could we resist? The neural extraction device finished its calibration with a soft chime. Now then, Chen said, approaching Thrax's cell with the device in hand, let's see what secrets your species has been hiding. As the procedure began, I realized that everything we'd believed about humans had been wrong. They weren't primitive. They weren't prey. They weren't even just another predator species. They were something far worse. They were us, but better. The Korthak Guild had spent 2 centuries hunting other species across the galaxy. We'd perfected the art of predation, refined it into a science, turned it into a profitable enterprise. But humans had turned hunting into an art form. They didn't just kill their prey, they studied it, understood it, and then developed increasingly sophisticated methods for dealing with similar threats in the future. We'd thought we were hunting them. In reality, they'd been farming us. And now, as I watched Chen extract information directly from Thrake's neural tissue with equipment that combined human innovation with technology stolen from previous hunting guilds, I understood the true scope of what humans were planning. They weren't just going to defeat the hunting guilds. They were going to replace them. 6 months later, I was released from the research facility. Not escaped, released. The humans had extracted everything useful from our neural patterns, reverse-engineered all our technology, and developed countermeasures for every hunting guild tactic in existence. I was given a choice: join the newly formed Human Hunting Consortium as a technical consultant, or return to Korthak space with a message for any guilds considering human targets. I chose the message. The warning I carried back was simple: humans aren't prey. They are not even predators in the traditional sense. They are something entirely new in the galaxy. A species that treats the act of being hunted as an opportunity to become better hunters themselves. Some guilds listened to my warning. They found new territories, far from human space, and continued their traditional operations. Others didn't listen. They assumed I'd been compromised, that human psychological warfare had broken my spirit. Those guilds no longer exist. The Korthak Guild officially disbanded 3 months after my return. Not because we were afraid, though we absolutely were, but because there was no longer any market for hunting guild services. Every civilization in the galaxy had heard about human defensive capabilities. No one wanted to risk hiring hunters who might themselves become prey. I now work as a security consultant for a trading consortium. It's honest work, if boring. But every night I dream about Admiral Chen's smile and the sound of human boots on Korthak deck plating. The worst part? I have learned that everything we experienced was just the beginning. The research facility where we were held was one of dozens. The Human Hunting Consortium now operates throughout the galaxy, offering pest control services to any civilization with a hunting guild problem. Their success rate is 100%. Their client satisfaction rating is perfect. And their waiting list for new contracts gets longer every day. The galaxy's greatest hunters laughed at humans until the moment they realized they'd become the hunted. But by then it was far too late to do anything except provide valuable research data for the species that had just revolutionized the art of predation. The moral of this story, if there is one, is simple. Never assume you are at the top of the food chain. Somewhere out there something is always watching, learning, and preparing to prove you wrong. And if that something happens to be human, well, you'd better hope they are feeling merciful. Because trust me on this, you really don't want to find out what humans do for fun. Before we get started, make sure to subscribe to the channel and like this video. That way, you'll always stay connected to our stories and never miss the next adventure. Amara had exactly 3 minutes left on her shift when she heard the screaming. 3 minutes. 180 seconds between her and a hot shower, a cold beer, and the blissful silence of her tiny apartment, where nobody needed anything from her and nothing was on fire. She'd been counting down since hour 9 of this 12-hour nightmare, watching the clock tick with the desperate focus of a woman who'd unloaded 6 freight containers of mining equipment in 90-degree heat. But no, the universe had other plans. Because of course it did. The sound came from the alley behind the cargo docks, the kind of narrow, trash-filled gap between buildings, where smart people didn't go after dark. Amara was many things: stubborn, sarcastic, possibly too fond of cheap whiskey. But she'd never been accused of being smart. Not when it counted, anyway. She should have kept walking, should have clocked out, gone home, pretended she hadn't heard a thing. That was the frontier colony survival rule number 1. Mind your own business. Keep your head down. Don't get involved in whatever fresh hell was brewing in the shadows. Instead, she grabbed the cargo hook hanging by the loading bay door and headed toward the noise. "Stupid," she muttered to herself. "This is stupid. You're stupid." The alley reeked of rotting garbage and something chemical that probably violated at least 6 environmental regulations. Amara's boots splashed through something she really hoped was just water as she rounded the corner, cargo hook held like a very inadequate weapon. What she found made her stop dead. 4 men, human, which somehow made it worse, had backed something small and terrified against the far wall. They had the look of hired muscle, cheap armor, cheaper weapons, and the kind of swagger that came from never having met real consequences. The kind of thugs who worked for smugglers or gang bosses, doing the dirty work for people too smart to get their own hands bloody. The small, terrified something was a child. Not a human child, though. This kid had scales that shimmered iridescent even in the dim light, and eyes that reflected the glow from the street like a cat's, claws on hands that were too small to do any real damage, and a tail that lashed in fear. The kid couldn't have been more than 8 or 9 in human years, wearing clothes that looked expensive, real fabric, not synthweave. Amara's brain supplied the information automatically. Haxri, one of the apex predator species, the kind of aliens who grew up to be 8 feet of muscle, fang, and attitude. The kind who ran half the military operations in this sector of space and looked at humans like we were cute, squishy things that broke too easily to be useful. This particular Haxri was currently shaking like a leaf and making small, terrified chirping sounds. "Come on, little guy," one of the thugs was saying, his voice doing that fake friendly thing that made Amara's skin crawl. "We're not gonna hurt you. Just gonna take you somewhere safe, yeah? Your family's gonna pay good money to get you back." Ransom? Of course. Because kidnapping an apex predator's child was definitely a plan made by people who thought things through. The kid pressed harder against the wall, claws scraping uselessly against concrete. Amara cleared her throat. All 4 thugs spun around, weapons coming up. She got a good look at what she was dealing with. Plasma pistols, the cheap kind that overheated after 6 shots, but would absolutely turn her into a smoking crater before that became a problem. "Evening, gentlemen," she said, keeping her voice level and her cargo hook visible. "Lovely night for felony kidnapping." The lead thug, shaved head, scar across his nose, probably thought he looked intimidating, laughed. "Walk away, lady. This doesn't concern you." "See, I would," Amara said, taking a step forward. "I really would. I've had a long day. My back hurts. I'm pretty sure I pulled something in my shoulder. And I've got a date with a shower that's been calling my name for the last 3 hours." Another step. "But here's my problem," she continued. "I walk away, and tomorrow I wake up knowing I let 4 grown men terrorize a kid. And then I've got to live with that. And I'm already living with enough bad decisions without adding that to the pile." "Your funeral," Scarface said, raising his pistol. "Yeah," Amara sighed. "Probably." She moved fast. Not fast enough to dodge a plasma bolt, but fast enough to be unpredictable. The cargo hook swung out, caught Scarface's wrist, and his shot went wide, scorching the wall above the kid's head. Amara followed through, driving her boot into his knee. Something crunched. He went down screaming. Then everything went sideways. The other 3 opened fire, and Amara did the only thing she could think of. She threw herself between the kid and the guns. The first bolt hit her in the shoulder, and it felt like someone had shoved a red-hot poker through her flesh. The second caught her in the ribs. The third, fourth, and fifth came so fast she couldn't tell where they hit, just that her entire body was suddenly made of fire and agony. She heard the kid screaming, a high, terrified sound that cut through the pain. Sixth shot. Her leg gave out. The seventh knocked her flat. The eighth, she didn't really feel. Everything had gone distant and fuzzy, like she was watching it happen to someone else. She was on the ground, she realized. When had that happened? The kid was underneath her, protected by her body, still making those scared, chirping sounds. "You crazy!" one of the thugs was shouting, but his voice sounded like it was coming from underwater. Footsteps. Running. The thugs were leaving, probably heard sirens, or maybe they'd just realized they'd shot a human in front of a witness, and that was going to bring heat they didn't want. Amara tried to move, to check if the kid was okay, but her body wasn't responding anymore. Everything felt cold despite the burning pain. That was bad, right? She was pretty sure that was bad. The kid wriggled out from under her, and she got a glimpse of those big, reflective eyes staring down at her. The little haxorey was saying something, but Amara couldn't make out the words. Everything was getting darker. Her last coherent thought was, well, this is officially the dumbest way I've ever almost died, and I once tried to arm wrestle a cargo loader. Then the darkness swallowed her whole, and Amara stopped thinking anything at all. Somewhere far away, she was vaguely aware of more sounds. Shouting, the whine of emergency vehicles, someone lifting her, multiple someones, strong hands, urgent voices speaking in languages she didn't recognize. But it all felt very far away, and not particularly important anymore. If this was dying, it was a lot less dramatic than the movies made it look. Mostly, it was just quiet and cold. And then, nothing at all. Waking up was a mistake. That was Amara's first coherent thought, as consciousness dragged her up from the comfortable void. Her second thought was that everything hurt in that special way that suggested her body had been disassembled, run through a wood chipper, and then reassembled by someone working from a badly translated instruction manual. Her third thought was, why am I not dead? She cracked one eye open and immediately regretted it. The light was too bright, too clean, too white. This wasn't the dingy emergency clinic near the docks where freight workers went when they couldn't afford to miss work. This was the kind of medical facility that had actual windows and equipment that looked like it had been manufactured sometime in the current decade. "Oh, good," a male voice said from somewhere to her left. "You're awake. I was starting to wonder if you'd decided to just sleep through the next month." Amara turned her head, slowly, because apparently her neck had opinions about sudden movements, and found a human man in a white coat sitting in a chair beside her bed. He was maybe 50, with gray streaking through dark hair, and the kind of tired eyes that said he'd seen some things and wasn't particularly impressed by any of them. "Where?" Her voice came out like gravel. She tried again. "Where am I?" "Mercy General, Upper District," the man said. "I'm Dr. Harry. And before you ask, yes, you should be dead. No, I don't know how you're not. And yes, someone paid for the very expensive treatment that's the only reason we're having this conversation." Amara processed that. Upper District, the fancy part of Iron Haven where people had things like savings accounts and furniture that matched. She'd been there exactly once to deliver a package and had felt out of place the entire time. "How long?" she asked. 3 weeks, give or take," Harry said. "You were in a medically induced coma while the regenerative treatment did its work. You took 8 plasma bolts at close range. Your shoulder was slag. 3 ribs were powder. Your left lung was perforated, and your femur had a hole in it the size of my fist." He said it clinically, like he was reading a grocery list. Amara appreciated that. She didn't need sympathy. She needed information. "The kid?" she asked. Harry's expression shifted into something that might have been amusement. "The kid is fine. Not a scratch on him thanks to you using your body as a meat shield." Which, for the record, was either the bravest or stupidest thing I have seen in 20 years of emergency medicine. And I once treated a guy who tried to fight a cargo mech with his bare hands. "Stupid," Amara said. "Definitely stupid." "Well, the kid's family disagrees." Harry stood up, and there was something in his posture that made Amara nervous. Which brings me to the complicated part of this conversation. You've got visitors, a lot of them, and they've been waiting very patiently for you to wake up. Visitors? Amara tried to sit up and discovered that her body had strong feelings about that plan. Who? The kind that travel with armed escorts and diplomatic credentials, Harry said. The kind that make hospital administrators very, very nervous. The kind that... Look, I'm just going to say it. There are Haxry Imperial Guards outside your room right now, and they've been there for 2 weeks. Amara stared at him. I'm sorry. There are... what? Imperial Guards, elite military. The kind of soldiers who could probably take out this entire building without breaking a sweat. Harry ran a hand through his hair. Turns out the kid you saved wasn't just any Haxry cub. His name is Rennick, and his father is High Commander Naxrill. As in, one of the most powerful military leaders in Haxry society. As in, the kind of person who can make entire planets nervous. The room suddenly felt too small. Amara's brain, still fuzzy from 3 weeks of forced unconsciousness, tried to process this information and failed spectacularly. "Oh," she said. "Oh, that's just fantastic." "It gets better," Harry said, and his tone suggested it absolutely did not get better. "The commander wants to meet you. He's been asking every day when you'd wake up. And before you ask, no, you can't say no. I mean, you can, but I don't recommend it. These people take honor and debts very seriously." "How seriously?" "The kind of seriously where refusing to meet him would be considered a grave insult and might cause an interstellar incident," Harry said. "So, you know, no pressure." Amara closed her eyes and counted to 10, then 20. Then she gave up because numbers weren't making this situation any less insane. "Fine," she said. "Wheel him in. Let's get this over with." "You sure? You just woke up. I can tell him you need more time." "Dr. Harry," Amara said, opening her eyes, "I'm lying in a hospital bed in the fancy part of town, apparently alive because some alien warlord paid for experimental treatment, and there are elite soldiers outside my door. I don't think more time is going to make this less weird." Harry nodded slowly. "Fair point. I'll let them know." He left, and Amara had about 30 seconds to contemplate her life choices before the door opened again. The Haxry who entered had to duck to fit through the doorway. He was massive, easily 8 feet tall, with scales that shimmered deep crimson and gold. His eyes were amber, slit-pupiled, and currently fixed on Amara with an intensity that made her want to hide under the blankets. He wore armor that looked ceremonial, but probably functioned just fine in actual combat, and he moved with the fluid grace of something that had been killing things efficiently for a very long time. Behind him, 2 more Haxry in military gear flanked the door. Guards for the guard, apparently. High Commander Naxrill stopped at the foot of her bed and just looked at her. Amara looked back, because she'd never been good at backing down, even when it was clearly the smart choice. The silence stretched out. Amara's internal monologue was screaming. Finally, Naxrill spoke. His voice was deep, resonant, and carried an accent that turned human words into something more growled than spoken. "You are Amara." It wasn't a question, but she answered anyway. "That's me. Dock worker, bad decision-maker, apparently too stubborn to die. Something flickered in those amber eyes. You saved my son. I got in the way of some bullets, Amara said. Not sure that counts as saving. You placed your body between him and harm, Naxril said. You took wounds that should have killed you. You did this for a child not of your species, not of your clan, not of your world. This is not getting in the way. This is sacrifice. The way he said that last word made it sound important. Capital S, important. Look, Amara said, I'm not trying to be difficult here, but I really just did what anyone would do. Kid was scared, bad guys had guns, I had a cargo hook and a history of poor impulse control. That's the whole story. No, Naxril said, and there was something almost confused in his tone. That is not what anyone would do. Most would flee. Many would hide. Some would call for help and hope it arrived in time. You attacked 4 armed males with a tool and your bare hands. You used your flesh as a shield. This is not normal behavior. Well, normal's overrated, Amara muttered. Naxril moved closer, and Amara fought the urge to sink deeper into the bed. He wasn't being threatening, at least she didn't think he was, but he was just so damn big, and every instinct she had was screaming that this was a predator, and she was very, very small. In my culture, Naxril said slowly, a life debt is sacred, absolute. You saved my son's life at the cost of your own. That you survived does not diminish the debt. It increases it. I'm not asking for anything, Amara said, quickly. Seriously, we're good. You paid for the fancy medical treatment, which, thank you for that, and we can just call it even. We cannot call it even, Naxril interrupted, and there was something almost offended in his tone. There is no even. There is debt, and there is honor, and there is family. You have given me back my son. There is no payment that balances this. He straightened, and suddenly his posture changed into something formal, ritualistic. The 2 guards by the door snapped to attention. I, High Commander Naxril of the Crimson Fleet, declare before witnesses that Amara of Ironhaven is kin chosen. She is blood of my blood, clan of my clan, family of my family. Her enemies are my enemies. Her honor is my honor. This bond is eternal and unbreakable. The words hung in the air like something physical. The guards had their fists over their hearts. Naxril was staring at her with an expression that might have been respect or might have been something else entirely. Amara's brain had officially given up. I'm sorry, she said. I'm what now? Kin chosen, Naxril repeated. It is the highest honor my people can bestow. You are now considered part of my family. My clan will protect you, provide for you, honor you as one of our own. But I'm human, Amara said, because apparently that was where her brain had decided to make it stand. I'm not. We're not even the same species. How does that work? It has never been done before, Naxril admitted. You are the first alien to be named kin chosen. But the law is clear. One who saves the life of a clan member at risk of their own becomes family. The law does not specify species. So you're just adopting me into your alien warrior family because I got shot? Because you chose to get shot, Naxril corrected. Because when faced with danger, you did not calculate odds or consider consequences. You simply acted. This is the mark of true strength, true honor. Amara laughed. She couldn't help it. The sound came out slightly hysterical, but honestly, who could blame her? Okay, she said. Okay, this is insane. This is completely insane. I'm a freight dock supervisor. I live in a 400-square-foot apartment. I eat instant noodles for dinner 3 nights a week. I am not warrior family material. You faced 4 armed enemies alone, Naxril said. You took 8 plasma bolts and survived. You protected a child with your life. What part of this is not warrior behavior? The part where I was mostly just annoyed and not thinking clearly? Courage is not the absence of fear, Naxril said. It is action despite fear. You have proven your courage. The matter is settled. He turned to leave, then paused at the door. My son wishes to visit you, he said. When you are stronger. He has been asking every day. The kid's okay? Amara asked. Really okay? Not a scratch, Naxril said, and something in his voice softened. Because of you. Rest now, Amara. Kin chosen. We will speak again soon. He left, guards following, and the room suddenly felt much larger and much quieter. Dr. Harry poked his head back in. So, he said, that happened? I've been adopted by alien warriors, Amara said to the ceiling. This is my life now. Could be worse, Harry offered. How? How could this possibly be worse? Harry considered. Well, you could still be dead. Yeah, Amara sighed. There is that. She closed her eyes and tried very hard not to think about what being kin chosen to a high commander actually meant. She had a feeling she was going to find out whether she wanted to or not. Amara was discharged from Mercy General 5 days later, and that's when she learned that her life had become a circus. A circus with armed guards, media drones, and apparently a security detail that followed her everywhere, like the world's most intimidating shadows. This is ridiculous, she said, for the 15th time that morning, staring at the Haxri warrior currently standing outside her apartment door. I don't need a bodyguard. I live on the 4th floor of a building with broken elevators. The most dangerous thing here is the mold in the bathroom. Lieutenant Horan, because of course he had a rank and a name, and apparently a permanent assignment to make her life complicated, didn't even blink. He was smaller than Naxril, only about 6.5 feet tall, with dark green scales and eyes that tracked every movement in the hallway, like he was expecting an attack from the vending machine. High Commander's orders, Horan said, his voice clipped and professional. You are kin chosen. You will be protected. I've lived here for 3 years without protection, Amara pointed out. I think I can manage. You were not a political symbol 3 years ago, Horan replied. You were not known across 6 star systems. You were not the first human to be named kin chosen to a Haxri clan. You are now all of these things. Therefore, you will be protected. He said it like he was explaining basic math to a particularly slow child. Amara resisted the urge to throw something at him. I don't want to be a political symbol, she muttered, unlocking her door. I want to be a person who drinks coffee in her underwear and doesn't have an audience. Then you should not have saved the High Commander's son, Horan said. Amara turned to stare at him. Are you seriously suggesting I should have let a kid get kidnapped? I am suggesting that actions have consequences, Horan said. You chose to act. These are the consequences. You know what? I don't like you, Amara said. That is acceptable, Horan replied. I am not here to be liked. I am here to ensure you survive. Amara slammed the door in his face and immediately felt childish about it. Then she decided she didn't care. If she was going to be stuck with a judgmental lizard cat warrior following her around, she was allowed to be petty about it. Her apartment looked exactly the same as she'd left it 3 weeks ago, which was somehow both comforting and depressing. Dishes in the sink, laundry on the chair, The plant by the window that she'd named Herbert was definitely dead now. Nothing had changed, except everything had changed, and Amara didn't know how to process that. She made coffee, the cheap instant kind that tasted like regret, and sat on her couch, trying to figure out what came next. Her comm unit buzzed, then buzzed again, then started buzzing continuously. Messages, hundreds of them. Interview requests from news outlets across the colony and beyond. Job offers from security companies. Marriage proposals from people she'd never met. Threats from people who apparently had strong feelings about humans getting special treatment from alien species. Amara turned the comm unit off and threw it across the room. "This is fine," she said to her dead plant. "Everything is fine." Herbert did not respond, being dead. The knock on her door 3 hours later was small and hesitant, nothing like Haran's earlier pounding. Amara opened it to find Rennick standing in the hallway, looking up at her with those big reflective eyes. He was wearing clean clothes now, expensive looking, and there was an older Haxry female behind him. A nanny or guardian, probably. Haran loomed in the background, watching. "Hi," Rennick said in heavily accented human standard. "You are awake." Something in Amara's chest did a weird twisting thing. The kid was okay. Really, actually okay. Not a scratch on him, just like everyone had said. "Yeah," she said, crouching down to his level and immediately regretting it when her still healing ribs protested. "I'm awake. How are you doing, kid?" "I am good," Rennick said. "Because of you. Father says you are family now. He says you are very brave." "Your father gives me too much credit," Amara said. "I just did what needed doing." "You took the fire weapons," Rennick said, and his voice got smaller. "You covered me. I thought you were dead. There was so much blood." Oh no. The kid had trauma. Of course he had trauma. He'd watched someone get shot 8 times right in front of him. "Hey," Amara said softly. "I'm okay. See? Still here, still kicking. Takes more than a few plasma bolts to keep me down." Rennick reached out and touched her arm, like he needed to confirm she was real. His claws were tiny, barely sharp enough to scratch. "I brought you something," he said, pulling a small object from his pocket. "Father says, when someone saves your life, you give them a token, so they remember you are grateful." He held out what looked like a small carved stone, smooth and dark, with symbols etched into its surface. "It is from our home world," Rennick explained. "It means protector. Father says you are my protector now. Family protects family." Amara took the stone, and that weird twisting thing in her chest got worse. She wasn't good with emotions. She was good with cargo manifests and sarcasm and keeping her head down. This was way outside her comfort zone. "Thank you," she managed. "I'll keep it safe." Rennick smiled, showing way too many teeth, and Amara reminded herself that this cute kid would eventually grow up to be an 8-foot apex predator. Biology was weird. The nanny ushered Rennick away after a few more minutes, and Amara was left standing in her doorway, holding a carved stone and feeling like her life had tilted sideways. "That was kind of him," Haran said from his post. "I thought you didn't do small talk," Amara said. "I do not," Haran replied. "I am making an observation. The young one has been distressed since the incident. You are the first person who has made him smile." Amara looked at the stone in her hand. "He's a good kid." "He is the son of a high commander," Haran said. "He will be a warrior, a leader. He will command fleets and make decisions that affect billions. But yes, he is also a good child." Something in Haran's tone made Amara look at him more closely. You don't think I should be kin-chosen, do you? Haran was quiet for a long moment. I think you are human. Soft. Weak. Your species has been part of the Galactic Coalition for less than a generation. You have no warrior tradition, no honor codes, no understanding of what it means to be Haxriai? Tell me how you really feel, Amara muttered. But, Haran continued, the High Commander has made his decision, and the High Commander does not make decisions lightly. So I will protect you, whether I understand his reasoning or not. How inspiring, Amara said, really feeling the family love here. You want honesty or comfort? Haran asked. I can provide only one. Honesty's fine, Amara sighed. I've had enough smoke blown up my... The explosion cut her off. It came from below, a massive boom that shook the entire building. Amara stumbled, and Haran moved faster than anything that size should be able to move, pulling her back into her apartment. Stay down, he barked, and suddenly he had a weapon in his hand. Where had he been keeping that? And was speaking rapidly into a comm unit in his own language. What the hell? Amara started. Another explosion. Closer. The lights flickered. We are under attack, Haran said, scanning the hallway. Someone has breached the building perimeter. We need to move, now. Attack? Who's attacking? Does it matter? Haran grabbed her arm, carefully but firmly. There are people trying to kill you. We can discuss their motivations after you are not dead. He pulled her into the hallway, and Amara's brain finally caught up with what was happening. Someone was trying to kill her. Actually, genuinely trying to kill her. Because she'd saved a kid and become famous. And apparently, that made her a target. I really hate my life right now, she said. Complain later, Haran said. Run, now. They ran. The stairwell was full of smoke, and Amara could hear screaming from the lower floors. Haran moved like he'd done this 1,000 times, weapon up, checking corners, keeping himself between her and any potential threats. They made it down 2 floors before the attackers found them. 3 figures in tactical gear, faces covered, weapons raised. They opened fire without warning, and Haran shoved Amara behind a concrete pillar hard enough to knock the wind out of her. He returned fire, and the sound was deafening in the enclosed space. 1 attacker went down, then another. The 3rd got a shot off that scorched the wall inches from Amara's head. Haran moved, fast and brutal, and suddenly the 3rd attacker was on the ground with Haran's claws at his throat. Who sent you? Haran demanded. The attacker said nothing. Haran applied pressure, and the attacker made a choking sound. Who sent you? The collective, the attacker gasped. The collective of rational governance. You're contaminating the galaxy. Humans don't belong. Haran knocked him unconscious before he could finish. We need to move, he said, pulling Amara up. There will be more. They made it to the ground floor and out into the street where chaos reigned. Emergency vehicles, security forces, and a crowd of onlookers with cameras. Amara's building was on fire, smoke pouring from the lower floors. A transport vehicle screeched to a halt in front of them, and Naxriel emerged, looking absolutely murderous. You are unharmed? He demanded, looking Amara over. I'm fine, Amara said. Haran got me out. What the hell is going on? An assassination attempt, Naxriel said. The collective of rational governance. A political faction that believes humans are inferior and should not be elevated within coalition society. They see your kin-chosen status as an insult to superior species. So they tried to blow me up, Amara said. That seems excessive. They tried to make a statement, Naxriel said. They failed, and now they will face consequences. He turned to Horan. "You protected her." "It is my duty," Horan said. "You did well," Naxriel said, and there was approval in his voice. Then he looked at Amara. "You cannot return to your home. It is not safe. You will stay in the diplomatic quarter, under full guard, until this threat is eliminated." "I don't want to hide," Amara said, surprising herself. "These people tried to kill me because I saved a kid, because I'm human, and apparently that's offensive to them. If I hide, they win. If you die, they also win," Naxriel pointed out. "Then don't let me die," Amara said, "but I'm not hiding. I'm not giving them the satisfaction." Naxriel studied her for a long moment. Then something that might have been respect flickered in his eyes. "You are very stubborn," he said. "Yeah," Amara said. "I've been told." "Good," Naxriel said. "Stubbornness is a warrior trait. Come, we have much to discuss, and enemies to hunt." As they climbed into the transport, Amara caught Horan, watching her with an expression she couldn't quite read. "What?" she asked. "Nothing," Horan said. "I am simply reconsidering my earlier assessment." "Of what?" "Of whether humans understand what it means to be warriors," Horan said quietly. "Perhaps I was wrong." Amara didn't know what to say to that, so she said nothing. But she kept the carved stone Rennick had given her clutched tight in her hand, and she thought about what it meant to be a protector. And she thought about the people who'd tried to kill her for the crime of being human and being honored. And she got angry. Not the hot, explosive kind of angry. The cold, determined kind. The kind that made decisions and stuck to them. If the collective wanted to make her a symbol, fine. She'd be a symbol, just not the kind they were expecting. The Galactic Council Summit was held in the largest convention center on Ironhaven, a massive structure of glass and steel that was supposed to represent unity and cooperation among species. Right now, it mostly represented a very large target. Amara stood in the staging area backstage, wearing clothes that cost more than 3 months of her old salary and feeling like a fraud. The human delegation was around her, colonists, engineers, administrators, all looking nervous. They'd been invited to present humanity's petition for elevated status within the coalition, to argue that humans deserved a real voice in galactic affairs. And Amara was supposed to be their symbol, their proof that humans were worthy. No pressure. "You do not have to do this," Naxriel said from beside her. He'd been against the plan from the start, but Amara had been stubborn, and eventually he'd given in. "We have intelligence that the collective will strike today. Let them come to us, on ground of our choosing. Not here, where innocence will be caught in the crossfire." "If I hide, they win," Amara said. "We've been over this." "If you die, they also win," Naxriel countered. "We have been over that as well." "Then I guess I better not die," Amara said. Horan appeared from the shadows. He was good at that, she'd learned. "Perimeter is secure. My team is in position. If the collective makes a move, we will be ready." "You sound almost concerned, Lieutenant," Amara said. "Careful. People might think you actually like me." "I do not like you," Horan said, but there was something in his tone that suggested he was lying. "I simply prefer that you remain alive. It would reflect poorly on me if you died under my protection." "How touching," Amara said. A human aide poked her head in. "5 minutes, everyone. They're ready for you." The delegation filed out toward the stage, and Amara took a breath. She could do this. She'd faced down armed thugs, survived 8 plasma bolts, and lived through 3 weeks of being a galactic celebrity. She could handle a speech. Probably. The convention center was packed. thousands of beings from dozens of species, all watching as the human delegation took the stage. Amara spotted the collective representatives in the audience. They weren't hiding, which was bold or stupid or both. They wore the gray and silver colors of their faction, and they watched the humans with expressions that ranged from contempt to outright hostility. The human ambassador, a woman named Clarissa, who actually knew what she was doing, began the presentation. She talked about human contributions to the coalition, about the colonies they'd built, the trade routes they'd established, the problems they'd solved. She was good, professional, hitting all the right notes, and the collective representatives looked bored. Then Clarissa introduced Amara, and the energy in the room shifted. "This is Amara," Clarissa said, "a freight dock worker who became the first human to be named kin-chosen by a Haxri clan. Her story represents what humanity brings to the coalition: courage, compassion, and the willingness to act when action is needed." Amara stepped forward, and every camera in the room focused on her. She hated it. "I'm not a politician," she said, because starting with honesty seemed like the only way to get through this. "I'm not a diplomat or a warrior or anyone important. 3 weeks ago, I was unloading cargo containers and counting down the minutes until my shift ended. Then I heard a kid screaming, and I made a choice." She could see Naxriel in the wings, watching. Rennick was beside him, small and attentive. "I didn't think about species or politics or galactic implications," Amara continued. "I just thought, there's a kid in trouble, and I can help. So I did. And yeah, I got shot 8 times for it, which I don't recommend, by the way. The recovery is terrible." A few laughs from the audience. Good. Humor helped. "But here's what I learned," Amara said. "Strength isn't about how big you are or how many weapons you have. It's about what you do when everything's on the line. It's about choosing to act when walking away would be easier. Humans might be new to the galaxy, and we might be smaller and softer than a lot of species here, but we don't quit. We don't back down. And we don't let kids get hurt if we can do something about it." One of the collective representatives stood up. "Inspiring words," he said, his voice dripping with sarcasm. "But words are cheap. Humans are weak. You survived through luck and alien charity. Nothing more. You are not warriors. You are not worthy of elevation. You are—" The explosion cut him off. It came from the east entrance, a massive blast that shook the entire building. Then another from the west. The lights went out, emergency systems kicked in, and suddenly there was screaming and chaos and the sound of weapons fire. The collective had made their move. Horan was beside Amara in an instant, weapon drawn. "Get down!" But Amara wasn't looking at him. She was looking at the human delegation, at the colonists and engineers who were frozen in panic, and at the collective soldiers pouring in through the breached entrances. "No," she said. "No, we're not doing this." "Amara," Horan started. "They want to prove we're weak?" Amara said. "Let's prove them wrong." She turned to the human delegation. "Listen up. I know you're scared. I'm scared too. But we've got 2 choices. We can hide and hope someone saves us, or we can fight back. Show them what humans do when we're cornered." "We're not soldiers," someone said. "Neither am I," Amara said. "But I'm stubborn, and I'm angry, and I'm really tired of people trying to kill me. Who's with me?" For a moment, nobody moved. Then a dock worker named Chen, no relation to anyone, just a guy who'd been part of the labor delegation, picked up a piece of broken debris and nodded. "I'm in," he said. Then another human stepped forward. And another. Within seconds, the entire delegation was armed with improvised weapons, chairs, debris, anything they could grab, and looking to Amara for direction. "Okay," Amara said. "Okay, here's what we do. We use the environment. We're smaller, so we're faster. We know this building. Most of us helped build it. Use that. Hit and run. Don't try to be heroes. Just slow them down until the real soldiers can do their job." Horan was staring at her. "You are insane." "Yeah, probably," Amara said. "You coming or not?" The fight that followed was chaos. The collective had brought heavy weapons and trained soldiers, but they hadn't counted on the humans fighting back. Amara's people used the building's layout against them, collapsing scaffolding, triggering fire suppression systems, turning the convention center into a maze of obstacles and hazards. Amara herself fought with a piece of pipe and pure spite, staying close to Horan, who was cutting through collective soldiers with brutal efficiency. She wasn't trying to win fights, she was trying to survive them. And there was a difference. A collective soldier cornered her near the stage, weapon raised. Amara threw her pipe at his face, ducked under his return fire, and kicked out his knee. He went down, and she grabbed his weapon, even though she barely knew how to use it. "Amara!" Horan shouted. "Behind you!" She spun, fired without aiming, and somehow hit the soldier who'd been sneaking up on her. Luck or instinct, she didn't know, and didn't care. The battle raged for what felt like hours, but was probably only minutes. Then Naxril arrived with Imperial guards, and suddenly, the collective soldiers were the ones being overwhelmed. The fighting ended quickly after that. Amara sat on the edge of the stage, breathing hard, covered in dust and blood. Some hers, most not, and watched as collective soldiers were rounded up and restrained. Naxril approached, and he looked impressed? It was hard to tell with Haxrai expressions. "You rallied your people," he said. "You fought." "We fought," Amara corrected. "All of us. That's what humans do. We're stubborn like that." "I am beginning to understand," Naxril said, "why the High Commander chose you as kin chosen." Amara looked up to find Horan standing there, and there was something different in his eyes. Respect, maybe. Or at least the beginning of it. "You were right," Horan said quietly. "I did not understand what it meant to be human. I thought weakness was physical. I did not account for strength of will." "Does this mean you like me now?" Amara asked. "I tolerate you," Horan said. "It is a start." The aftermath took hours to sort through. The collective's leadership was arrested, including Ambassador Lixoth, who'd orchestrated the entire operation. Turned out he was Haxri himself, a high-ranking official who'd believed that associating with humans would weaken his species. He'd arranged the original attack on Rennick, hoping to prevent any human-Haxri alliance from forming. He'd failed spectacularly. The Galactic Council, having watched humans fight back against overwhelming odds, voted to grant humanity elevated status within the coalition. It wasn't unanimous, but it was decisive. Amara declined the medals and ceremonies that followed. She'd had enough of being a symbol. 2 months later, she was back at the docks, not as a supervisor this time, but as a liaison between human workers and alien trade partners. It was still manual labor, still long hours, but it paid better and came with significantly fewer assassination attempts. Rennick visited once a week, usually with Horan in tow. The kid was learning human customs and teaching Amara Haxri ones, and it was weird and awkward and kind of wonderful. Naxril stopped by occasionally, always formal, always respectful. The kin-chosen bond was real, and Amara was still getting used to having an 8-foot warrior consider her family. "I have a question," Horan said one afternoon, standing guard while Amara processed shipping manifests. "Shoot," Amara said. "Would you do it again?" Horan asked, knowing what would follow. The fame, the attacks, the complications. Would you still save the child? Amara thought about it. About the plasma bolts and the pain and the 3 weeks in a coma. About becoming a political symbol and a target. About her apartment burning and her quiet life ending. Then she thought about Renique's smile and the carved stone she kept in her pocket. "Yeah," she said. "I would." "Why?" Horan asked. "Because he's a kid," Amara said simply. "And kids shouldn't have to be scared. That's reason enough." Horan nodded slowly. "I have been assigned as permanent liaison to human space," he said. "I requested the position." "Oh, great," Amara said. "I'm stuck with you now?" "It is my honor," Horan said. "That's what I was afraid of," Amara replied. But she was smiling when she said it. The galaxy had changed its view of humanity. They were no longer the soft, weak newcomers. They were the species that fought back, that protected their own, that refused to quit even when the odds were impossible. And Amara, who just wanted to finish her shift and go home, had somehow become the symbol of all that. It was ridiculous. But maybe, she thought, ridiculous wasn't so bad after all.
The sound of children laughing echoed across the courtyard of the Galactic Juvenile Education Facility. Rick Walsh sat on a bench near the fountain, watching a group of young Centauri students play a game that looked like a combination of tag and zero-gravity ballet. He smiled, remembering how strange it had seemed when he first arrived 6 months ago. Now it felt normal. Rick was a staff sergeant in the Human Coalition Forces, though his current assignment barely felt like military duty. He was supposed to be training the local security teams, teaching them Earth combat techniques. Most days, he spent more time telling stories to curious children than drilling soldiers. The kids loved hearing about Earth animals, especially the weird ones. Last week, he had spent an entire afternoon explaining what a platypus was to a group of confused Alarian youngsters. Mr. Rick, a small voice called out. Lyra, a 9-year-old Centauri girl with silver skin and bright purple eyes, ran toward him. She held a data pad in her hands. "I found a picture of that animal you told us about yesterday." "The honey badger." Rick chuckled and took the pad from her. The screen showed a stocky, black and white creature with small eyes and visible claws. "Yep, that's the one. Mean little thing. Fights animals 10 times its size and doesn't back down from anything. Is that why they call you honey badger?" Lyra asked innocently. Rick's smile faded just a bit. His call sign was not something he advertised here. It came from a different time, a bloodier time during the border conflicts. "Who told you that?" he asked gently. "I heard some of the security guards talking. They said you were scary when you fought." She looked worried. "But you're nice to us." Rick ruffled her hair, careful not to touch the sensitive nerve clusters on her scalp. "I'm nice to people who deserve nice. Animals like the honey badger, they're only dangerous when something threatens what they care about. Remember that, okay?" Lyra nodded and ran back to her friends. Rick watched her go, then glanced up at the sky. It was clear today, a pale green color thanks to Viridian Iphi's unusual atmosphere. 3 moons hung visible even in daylight. Beautiful, peaceful, too peaceful. Rick's instincts had been bothering him for 3 days now. Little things. The supply ship that was supposed to arrive yesterday never showed up. The military communication channels had more chatter than usual. But when he asked about it, everyone said it was just routine exercises. This morning, he had noticed the automated defense turrets on the facility's outer walls were running diagnostic tests, which usually meant someone suspected they might need to use them soon. He had tried to talk to Headmaster Torvak about running emergency drills with the students. The Alarian administrator had shut him down immediately. "We will not frighten the children with unnecessary military exercises, Sergeant Walsh. This is a school, not a military base." Rick had wanted to argue, but Torvak was right in a way. The facility had been safe for 30 years. It housed children from 47 different species, mostly the sons and daughters of diplomats and military officers. Security was good. The location was remote. There was no reason to expect trouble, except Rick's gut said otherwise. A soft alarm chimed from his wrist communicator. Time for the afternoon assembly. Rick stood and stretched, his joints popping. He was pushing 40 now, older than most frontline soldiers, but he kept himself in shape. Had to. You never knew when old skills might be needed again. The courtyard filled with students as classes let out. Teachers guided lines of children toward the central assembly area. Rick spotted Headmaster Torvak on the raised platform adjusting his formal robes. The Ilarian took these assemblies seriously, always giving speeches about unity and education and the bright future of the coalition. Rick positioned himself near the back, eyes scanning the crowd out of habit. Security guards stood at the regular posts. Everything looked normal. He started to relax, then the shields failed. It was not dramatic. No explosion, no alarm. The shimmering blue barrier that covered the facility like an invisible dome simply vanished. Rick saw it happen because he was looking up at exactly the right moment, watching a flock of local birds that had been deflected by the shield suddenly fly straight through where it used to be. Every instinct he had screamed danger. "Get down," Rick roared, already moving. 3 seconds later, the sky split open with fire. Assault ships materialized out of stealth mode directly overhead, their hulls painted blood red. Rick recognized the design immediately. Marauder-class gunships favored by mercenary groups. The heavy weapons on their undersides glowed with charging energy. The first bombardment hit the security barracks on the east side of the facility. The building exploded in a ball of superheated plasma. The shockwave knocked dozens of children off their feet. Screaming started instantly, high-pitched and terrified. Rick was already running. His mind shifted gears, combat training taking over after months of dormancy. The armory was 300 meters away. He needed weapons. He needed to get the children to shelter. He needed to do both right now. Another explosion rocked the Western Guard Tower. Rick saw bodies thrown through the air. The automated defenses were not responding. That meant someone had hacked the systems before the attack. This was planned. Professional dark shapes dropped from the assault ships. Mercenaries in powered armor descending on jump jets. They landed hard in the courtyard, weapons already firing. Coalition guards who tried to fight back were cut down in seconds. Rick grabbed 2 small children who were frozen in terror and shoved them behind a decorative planter. "Run to the admin building. Underground shelter, go now." One of the children, a young Threxian boy, just stared at him with huge eyes. Rick forced himself to soften his voice. "I need you to be brave. Can you do that for me? Run fast and don't look back." The boy nodded and grabbed his friend's hand. They ran. Rick moved through the chaos, pulling children out of the open, directing them toward safety. A plasma bolt seared past his head, close enough that he smelled burning air. He dove behind the fountain as more shots chewed into the stone structure. A group of students huddled near the platform, pinned down by mercenary fire. He counted 8 children. Lyra was among them, pressed flat against the ground with tears streaming down her face. Their eyes met across 30 meters of open ground. She called out his name. Rick looked at the mercenaries advancing on their position. He looked at the children. He looked at the burning buildings and the bodies of guards who had not been fast enough. Then he looked at the armory, still intact but in the opposite direction. The choice took half a second. Rick sprinted toward the children, staying low. Plasma fire tracked him, but he was moving too fast, too erratically. He had done this before in worse situations, against worse odds. His body remembered even if his mind had tried to forget. He slid in next to Lyra, using his body to shield her from incoming fire. The other children clustered around him. "Uncle Rick," Lyra sobbed. "I'm scared." Rick checked his surroundings. They were trapped. More mercenaries were landing. The coalition guards were dead or scattered. Help was not coming fast enough. He had no weapons. He had no armor. He had 8 terrified children depending on him. Rick looked down at Lyra and smiled. It was not a nice smile. It was the smile of something that had been sleeping and was now very much awake. "Stay down, kids," he said quietly. "Uncle Rick's going to work now." The honey badger was loose, and honey badgers don't care about odds. Rick moved fast through the smoke and chaos. He kept the children behind him as he navigated toward the maintenance corridors. These passages ran beneath the facility like veins, used by repair crews and rarely traveled by students or teachers. Rick had mapped them during his first week here, old habits from his combat days. Always know the terrain, always have an escape route, Stay close and stay quiet, he whispered to the 8 children following him. They obeyed without question, their fear making them compliant. Good. Fear could be useful if it kept them careful. They reached a service entrance hidden behind decorative panels. Rick pried it open with his bare hands, the metal groaning but giving way. Inside, the corridor was dark and cramped. He ushered the children through and sealed the door behind them. Emergency lighting strips glowed faintly along the floor, casting green shadows. Rick led them deeper into the facility's guts, moving by memory. The shelter was on the other side of the complex, beneath the administration building. It would take 15 minutes to get there through these tunnels, 15 minutes where anything could happen. Behind them, muffled explosions continued. The facility was being torn apart. They reached an intersection. Rick held up his hand, signaling the children to stop. He listened. Footsteps above. Heavy boots. Multiple contacts. He counted at least 6 moving in formation. Professionals. He needed a weapon. Rick gestured for the children to stay put and crept forward alone. The corridor opened into a maintenance bay where ventilation systems connected. Through a ceiling grate, he could see into the hallway above. 4 mercenaries stood there, armored and armed with military-grade plasma rifles. They were executing wounded coalition guards, shooting each one in the head to confirm kills. Rick's jaw tightened. These were not soldiers following rules of engagement. These were killers on a payroll. One mercenary split off from the group, moving down a side passage. Rick waited until the others moved out of sight, then silently climbed the access ladder to the grate. He pushed it up slowly, inch by inch, making no sound. The lone mercenary walked past, oblivious. Rick exploded upward. His hand clamped over the mercenary's mouth while his other arm locked around the neck in a chokehold. The mercenary struggled, trying to bring his weapon around, but Rick was already twisting. There was a muffled crack. The body went limp. Rick lowered the corpse to the ground and stripped it quickly. Plasma rifle, sidearm, combat knife. Armor was too big and would slow him down, but he took the communication earpiece and tactical display visor. The earpiece crackled to life in his ear. Mercenary chatter, Sector 7 clear. No resistance, main courtyard secured. We have the landing pads. Command, this is Team 3. We've got approximately 40 hostages in the auditorium, adults and juveniles. Rick filed away every piece of information. 60 combatants total based on the unit designations he was hearing. Their commander was someone called Cross. Their mission was hostage-taking, not slaughter. They wanted leverage that gave him an advantage. They would be cautious about collateral damage. He would not. Rick returned to the children. They stared at the weapons he now carried with wide eyes. Lyra looked like she might cry again. I'm still the same person, Rick said gently. These are just tools. Tools I know how to use to keep you safe. Understand? They nodded. He led them onward. The maintenance tunnels brought them near the administration building without encountering more mercenaries. Rick could see the reinforced shelter doors ahead, sealed but intact. Good. He activated the emergency override code and the heavy doors hissed open. Inside, he found chaos. 50 or 60 people, students and staff, huddled in the dim emergency lighting. Coalition guards stood at the entrance with weapons drawn until they recognized Rick. Sergeant Walsh, Lieutenant Dowell, a Centauri officer with blue skin and sharp features, rushed forward. Thank the stars. We thought everyone in the courtyard was dead. Most are, Rick said flatly. He guided his group of children inside, and they were immediately swarmed by relieved teachers. What's your status? We have maybe 20 combat-capable personnel. 15 guards, 5 armed teachers. The rest are civilians and children. The shields are down, communications are jammed, and we have no contact with reinforcements. How long until help arrives? Dal's face darkened. Best case, 4 hours. The nearest coalition fleet is 3 systems away. Rick nodded. That was about what he expected. The mercenaries have 40 more hostages in the auditorium. They're planning to use them as leverage. We should fortify this position and wait for extraction, Dal said. This shelter was built to withstand orbital bombardment. We can hold. For how long? Rick asked. They control the facility. They can cut life support, vent the atmosphere, or just set demolition charges. This shelter becomes a tomb if we wait. What are you suggesting? Rick checked the plasma rifle's charge. Full. Good. I'm going back out there. Dal grabbed his arm. That's suicide. You're one man against 60 trained mercenaries. 57, Rick corrected. I already killed 3. He pulled his arm free. I'm not asking permission, Lieutenant. I'm informing you of my intentions. When you hear explosions near the auditorium, that's your signal to push out and secure the landing pads. We need to call for help. You'll never reach the auditorium alive. Rick smiled that cold smile again. You don't know much about honey badgers, do you, Lieutenant? Before Dal could respond, Rick was moving toward the shelter exit. A small voice stopped him. Uncle Rick, wait. Pax, the young Threxian boy he had saved earlier, ran up to him. The child held out a small device. I know the facility better than anyone. All the kids do. We know every vent, every hidden passage. We want to help. Rick knelt down to the boy's level. You already helped by being brave and getting to safety. That's enough. But you're going to fight them alone. That's what I do, kid. Pax's eyes filled with tears, but his voice stayed steady. The honey badger fights big things and doesn't care. You told us that. But even honey badgers need help sometimes. Rick felt something twist in his chest. He put a hand on the boy's shoulder. You're right. I do need help. I need you to stay here and protect the others. Keep them calm. Keep them safe. Can you do that for me? Pax nodded, wiping his eyes. I can do that. Good man. Rick stood and walked toward the exit. He paused at the threshold, looking back at the frightened faces watching him. Children who had been laughing and playing just an hour ago. Adults who thought today would be like any other day. Listen to me, Rick said, his voice carrying through the shelter. I know you're scared. I know this seems impossible, but I need you to believe something. I need you to believe that I will get those hostages out. I need you to believe that we will survive this. Because that belief, that hope, is what keeps us human. It's what makes us different. We don't give up. We don't abandon each other. And we sure as hell don't let monsters win. He hefted the plasma rifle. So stay strong. Stay together. And when this is over, we'll all walk out of here. That's a promise. The shelter doors sealed behind him with a solid thunk. Rick was alone in hostile territory, outnumbered and outgunned. He had been in worse situations, not many, but a few. The earpiece crackled with mercenary communications. They were consolidating positions, tightening control. They thought they had won. They thought it was over. Rick started moving through the facility like a ghost, silent, deadly, hunting time to show them what happened when you made a human. Angry. Time to show them what a honey badger could do when you threatened its family. The children were his family now. All of them. Every single child in this facility, and Rick Walsh protected family no matter the cost. Rick moved through the facility like death wearing skin. He knew every corner of this place now, every blind spot and choke point. The mercenaries were good, but they were fighting on his ground. He found Team 5 in the eastern dormitory, 4 soldiers searching rooms for hiding children. Rick watched them from a ventilation shaft above. They moved with discipline, covering each other, checking corners. Professional work, too bad for them. Rick waited until they split into pairs, 2 entering rooms on opposite sides of the hall. Then he dropped through a ceiling panel behind the rear pair. The combat knife entered the first mercenary's neck before the man could turn. Rick caught the falling body, used it as a shield as the second mercenary spun around. The plasma bolt meant for Rick's head hit his dead comrade instead. Rick threw the corpse forward, closing distance. The mercenary backpedaled, trying to bring his rifle up. Too slow. Rick was inside his guard, striking with precise brutality. Elbow to throat. Knee to groin.
The massive Imperial flagship Eternal.
The Galactic Council Chamber was a masterpiece of arrogance, a floating jewel of self-importance nestled within the Andromeda core. 100 alien species filled the Great Hall, their voices humming in dissonant waves of overconfidence. At the center of it all, Grand Minister Vrick stood with a bemused expression, his pale blue skin shimmering under the artificial glow of the council's illumination rings. He was by all accounts a patient being. He had listened to the rise and fall of countless civilizations, overseen the induction of newly discovered species, and rarely found himself troubled by lesser creatures. But humans? Humans were an anomaly he found almost insulting. The primitives call themselves Homo sapiens, he declared, flicking through a holographic dossier with deliberate distaste. A species so reckless, they nearly wiped themselves out multiple times before achieving interstellar infancy. Ripples of laughter echoed across the chamber. A gelatinous being from the Ketsith Dominion wobbled with amusement, its translucent core pulsating as it spoke. They still burn fossil fuels for energy? Absurd. Another counselor, a reptilian delegate from the Zelver Imperium, hissed in amusement. Their combat history is even worse. They war with themselves over imaginary borders and ritualistic grievances. Primitive, self-destructive, Vrick let the mockery settle before continuing. Our intelligence suggests their war instincts are reactionary, not strategic. They lack discipline. They fight with brute force rather than calculated efficiency. He dismissed the hologram with a wave of his three-fingered hand. They are not a threat, and yet, some caution remained. There had been reports, scattered, fragmented accounts, of human soldiers exhibiting terrifying levels of endurance and adaptability. But data, as always, could be manipulated. Anecdotal evidence meant nothing. A decision was made. The humans would be observed, cataloged, and disregarded. It should have been simple. The first mistake came within hours of deployment. The Council had authorized a discreet surveillance operation, a standard protocol for assessing pre-fold civilizations. A probe was dispatched, small enough to avoid detection, but advanced enough to gather necessary data. It drifted into Earth's upper atmosphere, adjusting its cloaking frequency, scanning the planet's surface. It didn't last 20 minutes. Somewhere in the middle of the North American continent, a farmer named Earl Simmons saw something glint in the sky, muttered something about damn government spies, and shot the probe clean out of the air with a hunting rifle. The bullet shouldn't have been capable of penetrating its outer shell. It did anyway. The Council dismissed it as an anomaly. Then they sent a stealth recon ship. That ship lasted exactly 1 hour before the internet got hold of the footage. It had landed quietly, just outside of a place called Nevada. Its crew convinced their cloaking technology would keep them undetected. What they hadn't accounted for was a group of amateur conspiracy theorists armed with night vision cameras, Wi-Fi, and a pathological distrust of anything unidentified in their airspace. Within minutes, social media was flooded with live feeds. Aliens confirmed trended globally. U.S. military radar locked onto the disturbance, scrambling a rapid response unit before the reconnaissance crew even had time to send their initial scans. By the time the ship's pilot, an overworked Zelver technician, managed to activate the emergency recall beacon, the entire planet was in an uproar. It was around this time that the Council realized that maybe, just maybe, they had miscalculated. Jack Callahan had spent the last 10 years of his life getting very good at things most people never wanted to be good at. He was a Navy SEAL, and a damn good one. His official military record was classified, but if someone were to read between the lines, they would find stories of impossible survival, absurd victories, and a trail of bodies that stretched across 3 continents. But ask Jack about his achievements, and he'd simply say he was good at problem solving. That's why he wasn't surprised when his team was called into a high-security briefing room deep in an undisclosed military base. A general stood before them, arms crossed, looking less than thrilled. A massive screen flickered behind him, replaying footage from the so-called Nevada incident. A grainy, black and white feed displayed a clearly visible alien ship hovering over desert terrain, its outline shimmering as it struggled to maintain cloaking integrity. Jack frowned. "Tell me that's just some new deepfake tech." "Please. Wish I could," the general replied. "We intercepted this transmission before the ship self-destructed." The room fell silent as an alien voice played through the speakers. rough and guttural, but unmistakably intelligible. The humans should not have seen us. Their technology is primitive. This does not make sense. Requesting immediate extraction before. The transmission cut off in a sharp burst of static. Jack sighed, leaning back in his chair. So let me get this straight. A bunch of aliens showed up, got caught by a guy with a YouTube channel, panicked, and then what? Blew themselves up? That's the problem, the general said. We don't know why they were here or what they wanted. But this wasn't a peaceful visit. They were gathering data, studying our world, and that means they're coming back. Jack rubbed his temples. He had spent years preparing for every imaginable enemy. Aliens? Not on the list. And yet, the part of his brain that thrived on chaos was already shifting into gear. All right, he muttered. Let's find out who they are. The Galactic Council was not accustomed to being ignored. For millennia, their authority had been absolute. When they observed a species, they expected that species to remain observed, passive, unknowing, and ultimately inconsequential. Humans, however, had reacted to their presence with immediate hostility, unshakable paranoia, and a truly unreasonable amount of firepower. The surveillance mission had failed. Their cloaking technology had failed. And now, reports were coming in that the human military had intercepted alien transmissions, meaning they had not only detected the operation, but also decoded it. This was not supposed to happen. Vrick Toll sat in stunned silence as the latest report played before the council. Across the chamber, the previous laughter had dissolved into uneasy murmurs. A Zelver strategist cleared his throat. Perhaps we underestimated them. A Ketsith diplomat shuddered. They shouldn't have been able to do any of this. Vrick Toll's mandibles clicked together as he stared at the footage of the humans scrambling fighter jets and sending armed forces after a surveillance craft. He had spent years studying the rise and fall of civilizations. The rules were simple. Lesser species obeyed. Lesser species feared. But these humans? They didn't fear. They fought. And now, the entire council was beginning to understand something horrifying. They had laughed at humanity. But humanity had just declared war. The silence in the briefing room was heavy, the kind that settled in just before something irreversible happened. Jack Callahan leaned against the steel table, arms crossed, eyes flicking between the flickering alien transmission on the screen and the uneasy faces of the brass in the room. He had been in plenty of briefings like this before, covert operations. High-stakes missions where the wrong decision meant a body count. But this was something different. He had spent his career eliminating threats that bled red, just like he did. Now, for the first time, he was staring down an enemy that bled. Well, if they bled at all, it sure as hell wasn't red. The general broke the silence. The president wants answers. Command wants a strategy. I want you to tell me if we should be afraid. Jack exhaled through his nose, a slow, deliberate breath. I don't do fear, sir. I do action. He turned back to the screen, watching the grainy footage of the alien ship again. Something didn't sit right with him. They had technology that should have made them ghosts, and yet they had been caught. Not just caught, panicked. Whatever these things were, they had expected an easy in-and-out mission, and now they were scrambling. Which meant one of two things. Either they were incredibly arrogant, or they had never encountered a species like humans before. Jack pushed off the table, stretching his shoulders. We need to send them a message. The general's brow furrowed. We don't even know where to send one. Jack grinned. Then we make them come to us. The room shifted, the other officers exchanging uncertain glances. It was one thing to react. It was another to provoke. But Jack had spent too many years on the front lines to sit back and wait for someone else to make the first move. This wasn't just reconnaissance anymore. This was a challenge. Tell me we have access to their signal, he said. A tech officer nodded. Barely. Their encryption is leagues ahead of ours, but we've cracked part of their transmission relay. We can send something through, short range, nothing complex. That's all I need. Jack stepped up to the control panel, rolling his shoulders. If the aliens were listening, then he wanted to make sure they got a proper introduction to humanity. He tapped into the relay, fingers gliding over the console as he overrode the outbound encryption. Then he typed one sentence. Hold my beer. A moment passed. Then another. The general groaned. Jesus Christ. Jack grinned. They'll understand. And he was right. 3 hours later, deep in the cold abyss of space, aboard the primary Galactic Council command vessel, alarms blared across the bridge. Vrick Toll paced furiously, his elongated fingers twitching as he read the translated human transmission. Around him, the other council members gawked at the screen, confused, horrified. "Hold my beer," one of the delegates repeated, voice thick with uncertainty. "What does it mean?" "We don't know," Vrick Toll snapped. "But we intercepted it through our relay, which means—" He hesitated, his mind racing. The humans had not only cracked a fragment of their encrypted channels, but had sent a direct response through it. That shouldn't have been possible. The complexity of their communication relays alone should have kept human technology decades away from even detecting their presence, much less interacting with them. And yet, here they were. The phrase itself was meaningless, nonsensical human gibberish. But the implications? That was the real nightmare. They were being mocked. One of the analysts, a Zelver with twitching secondary eyelids, spoke in a low, anxious tone. "There is a pattern with human linguistics. This phrase, 'hold my beer,' appears in several transmissions from their digital archives." Vrick Toll turned sharply, and the analyst hesitated. "It appears to be a precursor to an act of extreme recklessness." A ripple of fear spread through the chamber. Vrick Toll's mandibles clicked together in agitation. The human military had been underestimated once. That would not happen again. He turned to his security chief, voice cutting through the rising murmurs. "Deploy an extraction team. Bring me a human. Alive." Jack wasn't surprised when they came for him. He was, however, disappointed. The alien strike team had done their research, or at least they thought they had. They had chosen a small rural town for the extraction, figuring that isolated human settlements would have less resistance, fewer complications. What they failed to account for was the fact that small rural towns in America weren't defenseless. And they sure as hell weren't unarmed. Jack was halfway through a beer at a dive bar when the first explosion rattled the street outside. The entire place went dead quiet as dust rained from the ceiling, bottles clinking on their shelves. The bartender, a woman with more tattoos than patience, sighed. "What now?" Jack set his drink down and adjusted his jacket. "I'm gonna guess, not local." He was on his feet before the second explosion hit, his instincts kicking in before his brain could even process what was happening. Outside, 5 sleek, black-clad figures emerged from the wreckage of an obliterated pickup truck. They were tall, easily 7 feet, with exoskeletal armor that shimmered under the neon glow of the flickering street signs. Plasma rifles hummed in their hands. Jack barely had time to appreciate the absurdity before the bartender sighed again, reaching under the counter and pulling out a sawed-off shotgun. "You gonna handle this, or what?"